You know what genuinely drives me insane? Watching people throw money into the stock market the same way someone feeds coins into a slot machine, hoping something magical happens, while at the exact same time they're carrying credit card balances with interest rates north of 20%. It's like pouring water into a bucket with massive holes in the bottom, and then acting surprised when nothing ever fills up. My name is Quinn, and welcome back to Quinn Invests US. I spend far too much time thinking about money, long-term investing, and why so many people do all the right things in the completely wrong order. And if you've ever felt confused about where investing actually fits into your financial life, this video is going to clear things up in a big way, because here's a reality that might shock you. According to recent data, 1 out of every 3 Americans doesn't even have a basic emergency fund. No buffer, no safety net, nothing. And the average amount people have saved for emergencies? Around $500. $500. That's less than most monthly car payments, and it's actually lower than it was a year ago. At the same time, these very same people are asking whether they should be buying individual stocks or investing in crypto. That's like asking if you should buy a Ferrari when you don't even have enough cash to fix the transmission on the car you already own. The truth is simple, even if people don't like hearing it. There is an optimal order to investing your money. A sequence that, if followed correctly, can tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime and dramatically accelerate your path toward financial independence. But most people completely ignore this order because it's not exciting. It doesn't involve chasing hot stocks or timing the market. It involves boring foundational work, and boring doesn't sell. Today, I'm going to walk you through the smartest order to invest your money, step by step, in a way that maximizes your returns while minimizing risk. And I promise you, at least one part of this is going to surprise you, especially the part about why your employer match comes before almost everything else, and why healthcare accounts might be the most powerful investment tool most people completely overlook. Before we dive into the actual sequence, it's important to understand why getting this order wrong is so destructive. Imagine building a house. You wouldn't start by picking out fancy light fixtures or granite countertops if the foundation was cracked and the roof was leaking. That would be ridiculous. And yet, that's exactly how most people treat their finances. They get excited about investing in the latest trending ETF while simultaneously bleeding money to high-interest debt that's mathematically guaranteed to wipe out any gains they might earn. The opportunity cost of doing things out of order is enormous. Every month you carry a credit card balance at 22% interest is a month where that debt grows faster than almost any reasonable investment you could make. Every month you ignore your employer's retirement match is literally free money you're leaving on the table. And every month you invest in a taxable account before using tax-advantaged options is money you're unnecessarily handing over to the IRS. So before you invest a single dollar anywhere, there is one thing that must come first. You need an emergency fund. I know, it sounds boring. I know you'd rather hear about which stock is going to explode or which crypto is the next big thing. But an emergency fund is more important than you probably realize, and not just for practical reasons. Yes, an emergency fund exists to cover unexpected expenses. That part is obvious. But the real power of an emergency fund is psychological. It creates a safety net that prevents you from making terrible financial decisions when life inevitably throws something unexpected at you. When your car breaks down or you get hit with an unexpected medical bill, having an emergency fund means you don't have to sell investments at the worst possible time or rely on high-interest debt to survive. It keeps small problems from turning into long-term financial disasters. The question everyone asks is how much they should save. You've probably heard the traditional advice, 3 to 6 months of living expenses. The problem is that range is so wide it's almost useless. The right amount depends entirely on your situation. If you have a stable job with strong benefits and predictable income, 3 months might be enough. If you're a freelancer, self-employed, or working in a volatile industry, you probably want closer to 6 months or even more. Here's a practical way to approach it. Start by saving your first $1,000 as fast as possible. This alone covers most minor emergencies and gives you immediate breathing room. Then work toward 1 full month of living expenses. Once you hit that milestone, keep building until you reach 3 months. From there, you can decide whether going higher makes sense for your lifestyle. And here's something most people don't realize. Vanguard found that people with at least $2,000 in emergency savings had financial health scores that were 21% higher than those without an emergency fund. That was the single biggest predictor of financial stability they found. $2,000 isn't life-changing money, but the psychological impact of knowing you can handle surprises is enormous. Once your emergency fund is in place, the next step is absolutely critical. You must eliminate high-interest debt before you seriously invest anything else. And when I say high-interest debt, I'm talking about anything above roughly 8%, though that threshold can shift depending on market conditions. Credit card debt is the biggest offender here, often carrying interest rates of 20% or more. High-interest debt is the villain of financial health. It grows faster than almost any realistic investment return. Trying to invest while carrying high-interest debt is like running a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. From a math perspective, paying off high-interest debt gives you a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate. Paying off a credit card charging 22% interest is the same as earning a risk-free 22% return. That's better than what even the best investors in history have averaged over the long term. To put this into perspective, imagine you have $5,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest and you only make minimum payments. Over 5 years, you'll pay nearly $2,800 in interest alone. That's money that could have been working for you instead of against you. The most efficient way to eliminate debt is simple. List all your debts along with their interest rates and minimum payments. Pay the minimum on everything, then put every extra dollar toward the debt with the highest interest rate. This is known as the avalanche method, and mathematically, it saves you the most money. Some people prefer the snowball method, paying off the smallest balances first for motivation. And while that can help psychologically, the avalanche method is objectively more efficient. Now here's where things get interesting, because there is one major exception to the rule of paying off debt before investing. And this exception is so important that it becomes the next step in the optimal order. If your employer offers a retirement match, you should contribute enough to get the full match, even before eliminating high-interest debt. This sounds counterintuitive, but the math is undeniable. An employer match is essentially a guaranteed, immediate return on your investment. Often 50% or even 100% instantly. No investment on the planet offers that kind of return with zero risk. For example, imagine your employer matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary. If you earn $50,000 per year, contributing $3,000 gets you an extra $1,500 from your employer. That's a 50% return the moment you contribute, before the money even has time to grow. Even if you're carrying high-interest debt, that immediate return usually makes the match worth prioritizing. The key is to contribute just enough to get the full match, then redirect every extra dollar back toward eliminating high-interest debt. Once the debt is gone, you can increase your retirement contributions further. One important thing to check here is your employer's vesting schedule. Some companies require you to stay for a certain period before the match is fully yours. Make sure you understand those rules, especially if you don't plan to stay long-term. With an emergency fund, high-interest debt eliminated, and employer matching secured, you've built the foundation of your financial house. Without these pieces in place, everything else you do is built on shaky ground. Now we move into what I call the tax optimization phase, and this is where most people completely mess things up. Instead of maximizing tax-advantaged accounts, they rush straight into taxable investing because it feels more flexible and exciting. That's a mistake. At this stage, the next step is to max out your individual retirement account, or IRA. An IRA gives you significantly more control over your investments than most employer-sponsored plans, and it typically comes with much lower fees. Many corporate 401k plans are loaded with expensive mutual funds that quietly siphon money away from your returns over decades. With an IRA, you can invest in low-cost index funds and ETFs with expense ratios measured in mere basis points instead of the 1% to 2% fees common in many workplace plans. That difference may sound small, but over decades it can cost you tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. For 2025, you can contribute up to $7,000 to an IRA, or $8,000 if you're 50 or older. Once you've maxed out your IRA, you can return to your employer's plan and increase contributions beyond the match. At this point, you'll need to choose between traditional and Roth accounts, and this decision matters more than most people realize. The basic idea is simple. If you're in a lower tax bracket now and expect to be in a higher one later, Roth accounts usually make sense. You pay tax now at a lower rate and withdraw tax-free later. If you're in a high tax bracket now and expect lower taxes in retirement, traditional accounts may be better. The challenge is that predicting future tax rates is incredibly difficult. For younger people early in their careers, Roth accounts often make sense because they're likely in their lowest tax bracket ever. For higher earners later in life, traditional accounts can provide powerful tax deferral. And then there's one investment vehicle that deserves far more attention than it gets: the Health Savings Account, or HSA. If you're eligible for an HSA, it might be the most powerful account available to you. Contributions are tax-deductible, growth is tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are also tax-free. That's triple tax advantage. Even more interesting, once you reach retirement age, you can withdraw HSA funds for non-medical expenses and simply pay income tax, just like a traditional IRA. But since healthcare expenses in retirement are almost guaranteed, having a pile of tax-free money dedicated to medical costs is like having a secret weapon. The math here is staggering. If you max out an HSA for 30 years and earn a modest 7% return, you could end up with over $400,000 set aside for healthcare, completely tax-free. Considering the average retiring couple spends over $300,000 on healthcare, an HSA can essentially remove one of retirement's biggest financial risks. Once your HSA is maxed, you return to your 401k and max it out fully. For 2025, the limit is $23,500 or $31,000 if you're eligible for catch-up contributions. At this stage, you're doing something very few people ever achieve. Between your IRA, HSA, and 401k, you could be sheltering over $35,000 per year from current taxation. That's serious money compounding without the IRS taking a cut every year. And here's something that might surprise you. Most people never make it this far. The average American saves about 6% of their income, which usually isn't enough to even max out an employer match and an IRA, let alone everything else. If you follow this sequence all the way through, you're already in the top few percent of savers. Only now, and only now, do we get to the step most people want to start with: taxable investment accounts. Taxable accounts offer incredible flexibility. No contribution limits, no withdrawal restrictions. You can invest in stocks, ETFs, index funds, or other assets freely. But they also come with a cost: taxes. Every dividend is taxed. Every realized gain triggers a tax bill. Over decades, that tax drag can reduce your final balance by hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to tax-advantaged accounts. For example, investing $10,000 per year for 30 years at 7% could result in nearly $950,000 in a tax-advantaged account. In a taxable account, after accounting for taxes along the way, you might end up with closer to $700,000. That difference is massive. Taxable accounts become valuable once you've exhausted your tax-advantaged options. They provide flexibility for early retirement, major purchases, or legacy planning. They're the final layer, not the starting point. So there it is. The smartest order to invest your money isn't flashy. It isn't exciting, and it definitely isn't what social media pushes. It's building an emergency fund, eliminating high-interest debt, capturing employer match, maximizing IRA contributions, using an HSA if available, maxing out your 401k, and only then investing in taxable accounts. Do the boring work first, and your future self will thank you. Because while everyone else is chasing the next hot stock, you'll be quietly building wealth that actually lasts.